Hello, and welcome to another episode of The Word for Kids. I'm Jamie, and I'm guiding you through the book of Exodus in a series of 20 episodes. Last time, we learned about the first of the signs God performed through Moses and Aaron. These were to try to convince the Pharaoh to let the people go. First, Aaron's staff turned into a snake. When Pharaoh's magicians also turned their staffs into snakes, Aaron's staff swallowed up their snakes. But Pharaoh did not give in. Because of this, God began to send plagues upon Egypt. The first plague was water turned to blood. Moses touched the waters of the Nile River with his staff, and the entire river was turned to blood. All the fish died, and it smelled disgusting. Next, Aaron stretched out his hand over all the waters in Egypt, and they too were turned to blood. Pharaoh still would not let the Israelites go, but his own Egyptian people began to suffer, struggling to get fresh drinking water. And that's where we left off last time. Are you ready for today's adventure? Let's go. Okay, so the waters of the Nile were turned to blood, and a week or 7 days passed. Again, Moses went to talk to Pharaoh and ask him to let his people go to the wilderness to worship. The Lord told Moses to warn Pharaoh that if he still refused to let the Israelites go, he would send a plague of frogs upon Egypt. This may not seem like too big of a deal, right? Frogs aren't usually what we consider terrible pests. They're even kind of cute. But we're not talking about just a few frogs. Not even a lot of frogs. We're talking about countless, unfathomable, enormous amounts of frogs everywhere. They would be in Pharaoh's palace, in the houses of the officials, in people's beds, in their ovens, and even hopping around on the people themselves. Think about it. Frogs everywhere. Frog poop everywhere. Frog pee everywhere. Nothing could stay clean, and everything would be stinky and dirty. You would think by now Pharaoh would have learned that Moses' God would do what he said he would do. But Pharaoh must have refused again to let the people go, so up again went Aaron's staff, stretched out over the waters of Egypt. And just as the Lord had said, frogs upon frogs upon frogs came climbing and hopping their way out of the waters and covering the land, the houses, the cooking utensils, the beds, and the people themselves. Pharaoh brought out his magicians, who also brought frogs upon the land with their own secret arts. Well, Pharaoh then had a problem. Certainly he wouldn't seem like a good leader with his people and himself covered in frogs. He then called for Moses and Aaron. "Pray to the Lord to take the frogs away from me and my people, and I will let your people go to offer sacrifices to the Lord." Moses replied, "I leave to you the honor of setting the time for me to pray for you and your officials and your people, that you and your house may be rid of the frogs, except for those that remain in the Nile." Pharaoh chose the next day, and when Moses prayed to God, the Lord answered his prayer and did as he asked. The frogs all died, and the people piled them into heaps, and the land reeked of dead frogs. This means a terrible, terrible smell of dead frogs filled the air. But there was relief from the frogs, and as soon as Pharaoh saw this relief, he again hardened his heart and did not keep his word to let the Israelite people go. So it was time for another plague. The Lord told Moses, "Tell Aaron, stretch out your staff and strike the dust of the ground. And throughout the land of Egypt, the dust will become gnats." Again, Moses and Aaron did as God asked. And when they did so, the dust turned to gnats, which came on the people and the animals. Have you ever had a tiny gnat buzzing around your face? The sound of it near your ear is enough to make you crazy. Or maybe you've seen a group of them swarming around some fruit at a picnic. Gross. Now imagine being covered in gnats, being unable to get away from them, finding even your cows and sheep are covered in gnats as well. This had to be terribly unpleasant, uncomfortable, and disgusting. Then, for the first time, when the magicians tried to do the same thing, they could not. As they looked around and saw gnats covering the people and animals, they said to Pharaoh, "This is the finger of God." So even Pharaoh's own magicians believed that Moses' God was doing these things. But Pharaoh's heart was hard, and he would not listen, just as the Lord had said would happen. So it was time for the next plague. The Lord said to Moses, "Get up early in the morning and confront Pharaoh as he goes to the river, and say to him, 'This is what the Lord says, let my people go so that they may worship me. If you do not let my people go, I will send swarms of flies on you and your officials, on your people and into your houses, even the ground will be covered with them. But on that day I will deal differently with the land of Goshen, where my people live. No swarms of flies will be there, so that you will know that I, the Lord, am in this land. I will make a distinction between my people and your people. This sign will occur tomorrow.'" And the Lord did just as he said he would. Dense swarms of flies poured into Pharaoh's palace, into the houses of his officials, and all of the land of Egypt was ruined by the flies. Again, Pharaoh called Moses and Aaron. He said to them, "Go, sacrifice to your God here in the land." Moses told the Pharaoh that this would not be right for them to do, because the sacrifices they offered were detestable to the Egyptians, and they feared the Egyptians would hurt them if they did so. Finally, Pharaoh said they could go into the wilderness for 3 days to offer sacrifices, but they could not go far. He asked them to pray for the flies to leave. Moses left Pharaoh and prayed for the flies to leave. And again, the Lord did what Moses asked. The flies left Pharaoh and his officials and the people. Not a fly remained. But do you think Pharaoh let the Israelites go? No. Again, his heart was hardened and he would not let them go. And that's where our story ends for today. It's now time for the word of the day.
Today's word of the day is power. Power is the strength or ability to do something. Power.
What do you think of when you hear the word power? Maybe powerlifting? Maybe a big, strong truck that can pull heavy things. Maybe you think of the power of a weather event like a tornado or volcano eruption. All of those things are great examples of the word power. But the amazing thing about our God is that he is all-powerful, which means he has more power than our human minds can even imagine. The story of the plagues isn't even the first time we've seen God demonstrate his strength, ability, and greatness. After all, he created the earth and everything in it. He caused the whole earth to flood, but he also calmed the waters. And as you read the Bible, you'll see examples of God's power all throughout it. God can do anything. Now it's time for the verse to remember. Today's verse is Psalm 4:3. Know that the Lord has set apart his faithful servant for himself. The Lord hears when I call to him. One more time. Know that the Lord has set apart his faithful servant for himself. The Lord hears when I call to him. Psalm 4:3. That's all the time we have for this episode. I can't wait to see you again soon for another episode of The Word for Kids.